They should be popping in there now.
Perfect. So I suppose just to start off then, the main aim of this is to give you an insight into nutrition, I suppose some ideas around food for pre, during, and after training and competition, but also to not only talk about the performance side of things, but also to fuel for health. So some nutritional considerations just to start off then, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the likes of the food pyramid. So this is something that we would use with the athletes in terms of what we would highlight as the pyramid. And the main part of that then is the bulk, the base. So your macro perspective. So what is your macro and your micro availability? Then as we move up the pyramid, we think about things like timing and the availability of your energy, protein, and your carbohydrates. Then we get into more specifics around your training camps and competition and what nutrition might look like on those. And I suppose the icing on the cake, and something that we don't really give much airtime, would be body weight, supplements, and diets. So we can see that the match, the week and monthly training phases and the long-term training goals oriented around your macro and your micronutrient availability. So nutritional considerations then, so energy requirements for particular sports and associated training demands. So we think about a marathon runner versus a sprinter. And even within these, one size does not fit all. So if we were thinking about two marathon runners, the size of the runner, what's their daily job on top of the amount of training that they're doing? Are they sedentary or are they running around a hospital ward? So you have to take all those energy expending considerations into account. There are any individual preferences or intolerances? Is there any allergies, nut, gluten, lactose? And then travel inside and outside of the country. So is there any cultural variations there and climates to consider as well? So just to start off then, I'm just going to touch on a really important concept, particularly within endurance type sports and within athletics itself, is around the concept of energy availability. And it really is a mismatch in managing the energy demands and energy consumption. So energy availability is defined as the amount of energy you have to fuel your body's needs after you take away the energy used during exercise. So when an athlete finds themselves in a state of low energy availability, there isn't enough energy left over within the body for your bodily functions to function optimally. How is this reduced? Well, it can be reduced a number of different ways. It may be due to high intensity exercise. It has an acute suppressive effect on your appetite. Increased energy expenditure due to the high intense exercise. So you may not feel hungry in that 48 hours post-intensive training. It may be simply due to a lack of time and poor nutritional knowledge, which for a lot of a lot of students, lack of time it's the real one that gets them. Inadequate meal frequency. Again, if we think of the student lifestyle, you might have a lecture, you might go to training, you might have a full day of lecture. So it's trying to get that frequency within your meals as well. Low energy density. And this has become quite popular over the last number of years. And I suppose when we have things like Instagram, which is fantastic in one way, but when you're an athlete and you have a high training load and you need a high energy intake, low energy density foods is not going to get you there. So when we think about things like volume eating, so sitting down to a big massive bowl of strawberries, even though it's deemed really, really healthy, it's not actually very high in energy, what you need for your fuel to train. It may be due to dieting or sports-specific demands, or it might be due to an eating disorder. So eating disorders can be defined as the clinical eating disorders, which we have on the right-hand side, or it may be due to disordered eating behaviors, and which more commonly now would be something like orthorexia, that unhealthy obsession with healthy eating. So what is the prevalence then? And I suppose the reason why I'm highlighting this is we can see that within track and field and elite endurance athletes, it's ranging between 31 to 52% and 18 and 63%. So it's really high. And also it's not just a female problem. We can also see there within the male cohort, it's ranging between 58 to 67. So what are the health consequences linked with it then? Some might be familiar with the female athlete triad. So we can see here in the blue, you can go from an optimal healthy state with regular menses, optimal bone health, right through to the purple, which is your disease state scenario. So you may have low energy availability, functional hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is the complete stoppage of menses. And due to the lack of estrogen circulating within the body, this can then contribute to poor bone health and osteoporosis later down the line. So it's critical to maximize bone mass during your adolescence and young adult years. Peak bone mass is the highest bone mass you'll achieve in your life, and this is reached by the ages of 20 to 30. So it's when we think about our intake of the likes of dairy foods, so an adequate calcium intake, it's really important to consume enough calcium during childhood and adolescence. Is important for the attainment of this peak bone mass. The research would highlight that female athletes often report suboptimal intakes, so a wide variety of sources should be offered, such as your milks, your milk products, which are often omitted from the diet in an attempt to reduce fat or maybe to reduce their energy intake, as well as maybe due to personal, religious, or philosophical reasons. So if that is the case, dietary modification and or supplementation may be warranted there to avoid, but avoiding levels in excess of 2,500 mg. So when we look a wee bit further into the health consequences of low energy availability, this underfueling, overexercising, mismatch between energy demands, in a group of endurance trained females, they looked at the impact of this on health, and what they found was menstrual dysfunction, functional hypothalamic amenorrhea, low bone mineral density. But what they also found was that these athletes had increased cholesterol, lower blood pressure, glucose, and a lower resting metabolic rate. So I suppose over time, this concept has developed into what we now know as REDS, relative energy deficiency in sports, and we can see the triad is built within that. It's just to highlight that it's not just related to menstrual function, bone health, but it may be showing in other areas of performance. So this is the health wheel, but there's also a performance wheel as well. So if anyone wants to delve into that a wee bit further or has any questions around that, feel free to ask. So what are the things we should look out for then? Number one for the female cohort anyway is the irregular periods, male and female related. So the recurrent injuries and illnesses. Sometimes you may go through you're dropping every 3 weeks due to some illness, a runny nose, cold and flu, picking up something in the throat. It's not just unlucky. So it may be worth sitting down. Is it every time that my training increases? Am I eating enough to match that training increase? Is it a time whenever my training's increasing, I'm studying for exams, or maybe I'm holding down a part-time job? So it's this mismatch in energy in, energy out, and it's knock-on effect then on the body. Other things to look out for then, so disordered eating patterns, rapid weight loss or low body weight, digestive or tummy issues. Maybe you have difficulty sleeping or switching off, or just feeling wired at nighttime, mood changes, and then the obvious one would be the drop in performance. So some advice then to consider around this would be cautious when interpreting trendy information, especially anything that is media derived. Talk to the qualified professionals. So any woman off the reproductive age in the absence of pregnancy, whether exercising or not, you really should have a regular menstrual cycle. And if not, this requires medical investigation. Listen to your body. And just a side note would be that anyone on the oral contraceptive pill, this is not appropriate in the treatment of REDS. And just because you have a withdrawal bleed, this isn't actually a period. So I suppose that's just a myth around that. So then moving on to looking at the common athlete issues that we become a cropper of. So athletes have very stressful and busy lifestyles, trying to juggle part-time jobs, trying to fit in training, attend lectures, and anything else that's going on, whether that be in the home or in their outside life. Some set unrealistic goals for themselves. Many think that, okay, feeling low or I need a pick me up, they might misuse supplements, and this can all lead then to that energy imbalance which we've just discussed. So what does the research show? So there's a higher incidence of injury and illness often when there's peaks in training volume, inadequate recovery, or during intensified competitions. So we can see during each of those periods, if there's a peak in training, adding in more stress, inadequate recovery, a lack of nutrition getting in, more stress, intensified competition, more physical stress. So it is that mismatch in your stress. So what we like to use as well is, and what we like to think about is keeping your bucket full. So with your sleep, nutrition, and recovery, we need all those things to balance your training, your work, your school, and your stress. So you need to be thinking about keeping your own body, your own bucket full. So the diet then in terms of your sports performance, so a good diet allows you to train harder and for longer. The ability to train harder and longer creates that greater overload on the body, which encourages these enhanced adaptations. And inevitably, the enhanced adaptations equal the fitter the athlete. And where does nutrition then fit into that? So we all know that it orientates around performance, but before an athlete can perform, they need to be healthy in order to do so. So nutrition plays a role in the prevention of illness. It plays a key role in facilitating recovery for athletes and promoting these training adaptations. So it has a role in optimizing body composition and consistency and confidence in preparation. And I suppose that's just going back to the bread and butter in the kitchen and how to prep your food and not be overwhelmed by it as well. So just getting those fundamental key skills in the kitchen right. So delay and fatigue is a major focus of performance-orientated nutrition. So the two major causes of fatigue then in sport would be your dehydration and your decline in body carbohydrate stores. So dehydration, the loss of bodily fluid through sweating, and your decline in body carbohydrate stores would be the decline in glucose and glycogen in blood and muscle. So hydration then, there's no the simple truth here is there's no other nutritional intervention that comes close to providing the performance enhancing effects of being well hydrated. Needs vary and are affected by your genetics, the body size. So the bigger the athlete, the more they would need to drink. Fitness levels, sometimes the fitter the athlete, or if you're a salty sweater, the more you'd need to drink. And also thinking about your electrolytes there as well. The environment, the warmer the climate, again, it's going to impact your hydration consumption and your exercise intensity. So your daily fluid needs then before exercise, and how to work that out would be 35 mils multiplied by your body weight. So 60 kg athlete multiplied by 35 mils would equate to what you need to drink for that day before you exercise. So then what we would do then to try and determine how much an athlete needs to drink to accommodate the water loss during exercise, we would weigh them before and after the session with minimal clothing. And that would equal your sweat loss or give us an indication of how much you need to replenish. So for each kg of body mass, you need to replace that with 1.5 litres of fluid. Again, on the right-hand side, we have our hydration chart to check the color of your urine. So where you don't want to be is in that lovely green color there at the top. We want to be in and around the bottom three. And that's just a quick way in the morning time to determine how hydrated or how dehydrated you are. What does it impact then? So it decreases your concentration, your alertness, increases your irritability, your fatigue, your reaction time. And it can also contribute to dizziness and headaches as well. Another assessment model that we would like to include sometimes, depending on our cohort and depending on what way you like to work, would be using the Watt analysis. So weighing yourself first thing in the morning, is it noticeably lower than previous mornings? If so, then maybe an indication that you're dehydrated. Checking your urine color. It goes without saying, if you're thirsty, it's a sure sign that you need to take some fluid on board. So water then is suitable for sessions lasting less than 60 minutes. And lasting any greater than that, we would advise maybe before to appropriately top up with some carbohydrate during your competitions lasting greater than 60 minutes, and then in some form as part of your nutritional recovery as well. Sorry. Yeah, so in terms of sports drinks then, there's no onus to go out and buy anything fancy or that's costly. You can make your own. And I know as a student, it's hard enough to try and feed yourself, never mind get every new product on the market. So fruit squash, some salt and water is ideal. Or if you wanted to go for the unsweetened version, that's your option there as well. So in terms of the body then and requiring the right fuel, would anybody have an idea of what the main type of fuel would be for your type of training? Anyone hazard a guess? Carbohydrates. Okay. So our main sources of carbohydrates, as we all know, are your starchy sources, and they would be deemed as your complex carbohydrates. So your cereals, your pasta, your rice, your oats, and then you have your simpler carbohydrates, so your fruits, your sports drinks, your sweetened cereals. But what I want to draw emphasis to here is that we have nutrient-rich foods that are fiber-rich and full of vitamins and minerals. And then we also have our non-nutrient-rich foods, so these foods that are high in fat or sugar. But what I really want to draw emphasis to is that all carbohydrates have a place, especially when you're an athlete. If we even use the simple one like before your long run on a Sunday, would you opt for the bowl of porridge or would you opt for the bowl of Rice Krispies? Probably everybody would want to opt for the bowl of porridge, maybe because they know it's the healthier option than a bowl of Rice Krispies. But if we're thinking about what the work that we're trying to do, we need simple carbohydrates. We need something that's low in fiber and low in fat. So Rice Krispies ticks all those boxes versus porridge. So it's important to keep that in mind. Context is key. And that's really important whenever you're choosing the types of foods that you need to eat. It doesn't always have to be the healthy option. It has to be what's right for you and what's right for your training. And it's really important what we think about that when we think about carbohydrates as well. So then in terms of fueling then, consistency throughout the week is key, and that's crucial across all meals. Timing is also vital. So larger meals 3 to 4 hours before your training, and then a lighter snack 1 to 2 hours before the session. An early morning strategy might be to consume a light meal and then consume some carbohydrate during your session. And yeah, so we can see here the plate at the top right hand corner. So a third of your plate, ideally the size of the palm of your hand, be the protein portion. The carbohydrate one is the main one that will vary depending on, I suppose, the needs, the amount of training that you're doing, the intensity that you're working at. And I'd also add in some vegetables, salads, or fruit just for the added vitamins and minerals and the color. But your main focus on your plate is your protein and your carbohydrate, predominantly your carbohydrate, given the type of your sport. So some examples then of meals 3 to 4 hours beforehand, we would go for something like rice or pasta with a tomato-based sauce, vegetables, and a lean protein. Keep the rice and pasta white if at all possible, given the fact that brown pasta is higher in fiber, so it'll just lie in your stomach during your session. Something like a large omelette with spinach, ham, cheese, toast. I have brown toast in there, but white as well, is every bit as good. Your overnight oats with your banana and peanut butter. And then 1 to 2 hours beforehand, you might have a bowl of cereal with milk or fruit and yogurt. So something that's easy, quick, convenient, that doesn't require much prep, and that you can eat on the go. Other pre-training meals and snacks options as well. So I suppose there's a bit of a mixture here, some that probably do require a bit of time, like your lovely toast with your eggs and your cheese, but things that you could easily have in your student home, your crumpets with jam, easily through together and could take with you. Smoothies first thing in the morning, if you have all the ingredients there, to whip that up maybe the night before and have it in the fridge ready to go in the morning. Again, cooking in bulk is also great as well. And then tubs of creamed rice and canned fruit is another option as well. It's important to note that the frozen fruit is every bit as nutritious as the fresh and is quite significantly cheaper as well. So it's important to keep that in mind whenever you're doing your weekly shop. So in terms of recovery then, I suppose we can't really look no further than something like your chocolate milks and the recovery benefits due to these 3 nutritional attributes. So the ratio of carbohydrate to protein is enough to enhance your glycogen resynthesis, so getting that glycogen back into the muscle. It contains whey protein and it also contains casein. So whey is protein and it's digested and absorbed really quickly, and casein is digested and absorbed really slowly. So sometimes, you know, if you have maybe a session late evening and you're up early the next morning for another session, adding something like casein into your, if you're making a granola bowl before bed, is really useful because it's actually helping your recovery overnight. So it's been released and digested really slowly into your system as you sleep. Again, just thinking about what we were chatting about earlier around the inadequate calcium intake in females and maybe eliminating dairy foods out of the diet, we can see here that dairy is actually ticking the 3 R's. So you're refueling, there's carbohydrate in there, there's protein in there, and it's got your fluid and electrolytes. And what's really important is that it's got those micronutrients like your calcium, your vitamin D, your potassium and iodine. So it's important to consider that, and also to remember that your almond drink, your pea drink, your oat drink are not equal replacements for your milk. And also those products have been fortified where they're actually naturally occurring here. So it's just something to consider when you're picking your refuel and your recovery drink. Other sources of protein then, and like I said, the size of the palm of your hand is roughly that 25 gram or 25 gram piece of meat, and that will get you around 20-30 grams of protein. So you have your options like your eggs, your mince, your cheese, your red meat, your lean meats, and then other source of protein for vegetarians and vegans. So you have your nuts and your pulses as well. Again, these foods are also higher in fiber, and the bioavailability of the protein in these sources wouldn't be as well absorbed in the body. So it's important to pair these nutrients with other foods in order to enhance their absorption as well. So on the topic of protein, and I think from analysing enough food diaries now from various cohorts of athletes, that it's definitely not the nutrient that any athlete is lacking in. The main one, I think it's at the jeopardy of carbohydrate. Everybody's probably consuming too much protein and not enough carbohydrate. But I just want to put this up here to highlight that, you know, don't be fooled or don't be sucked in by various products on the market. Looking at Weetabix, we know Weetabix is a carbohydrate. We know the breads on the right-hand side are carbohydrate foods. We know the protein, or sorry, not the protein, now I'm even getting sucked in. The peanut butter is a high-fat food. It's a fat source. And then our Snickers and our Mars, these are treat foods. So I can't remember exactly, but if you go on the, sorry. If you go on the European Food Safety Authority website, in order for a food product to claim high in protein or a source of protein, I think it only needs to claim protein, 30% of the food per 100 grams need to contain protein, and to be a source of protein, I think it's as low as 12 to 15%. So it's just important to keep your Weetabix, irrespective of protein, slap it on, that is your carbohydrate, and the same with your breads and your nut butters as well. And keep your protein sources as your dairies and your meats and your pulses, and you know that they're your reliable go-to for protein. And also, given the cost of various protein bars and things like that, it's important to highlight that you can get the same protein from your Greek yogurt and 2 Jaffa cakes, so dependent on your preferences. And also a lot of these bars are high in sweeteners, which can interact with the gut. So if you're maybe trying to include more protein in your diet and you're doing it by consuming 2 or 3 of these bars a day, but yet your gut is in bits, maybe have a closer look at the types of foods and the types of protein that you're actually consuming, as they do contain a lot of sweeteners and fibers. So just on that then, like I said, the problem isn't with athletes consuming enough protein, because they definitely are. We can see from the research here that endurance training females, Premier League footballers, track and female athletes, they're all consuming in around that 1.5 to 2.4 grams, which is perfect for an athlete. The main problem lies in the distribution. So athletes aren't actually eating enough at breakfast, lunch and dinner. So when we look at this research here, we can see that the distribution of dietary protein intake throughout the day among athletes, so 58% of these athletes were below the recommended 20 grams per serving at breakfast, it was only 36% were below the recommended amount at lunch, and only 8% were below it at dinner. And that's reflective of the Irish diet as well. When we think about it, we're really good at consuming our meat or potatoes and our veg at dinner time, but we're not so good at getting maybe our protein hit first thing in the morning. And what's really important is your muscles are like light switches, they need to be turned on at regular intervals. And in order to do that, you need that 20 to 30 grams of protein. So think about your muscles, think about the light switch that needs to be turned on. So getting that consistency in each of your meals would be way more important and way more beneficial versus trying to hit a protein target. If we look at it here, so 30, 30, 30 versus 10, 20, 60, we're getting that muscle protein synthesis each time that hit if we actually spread it out across our meals. So in terms of refuel then after a session, so after your session, you'd want to aim for 1 gram of carbohydrate per kg of body weight and your protein, and follow this up with a meal. So if you're a 60 kg athlete, you should eat around 60 grams of carbs and 20 grams of protein. And this should be started as soon as possible during your cool down. Now, I wouldn't be hammering you home if you were going straight home after your session to have a dinner. That's totally fine. But I suppose this is more whenever you're at competition or you're away on a camp and you know that you're having a late evening session, you're getting up early the next morning, maybe to go into another intense session or a longer type of run. So it's important to consider that as well. So start that recovery process straight away and then follow it up with a meal. Oh yeah, sorry. And that's just some examples of what ways you can top it up with your rice cakes, your bananas, your cereal bars. So a few simple take homes then would be to avoid skipping your meals, try and get consistency in your day, and prep. What I like to do with some of the athletes is get their calendar, basically their weekly plan, mark in where they have lectures, mark in where they're training, and then mark in, this is my time to cook, this is my time to do my shop, this is where I'm going to bulk cook, this is my time to eat. And that's what they work around. And it might be good maybe to do that for 1 or 2 weeks just to get into the flow of it and create those habits and routines. Plan your snacks for long training sessions. Focus on your carbohydrates before and during, and your carbohydrate and protein after. So think carbs to go before and during, and then protein to grow after. Your hydration, so 35 mils per kg of body weight, plus the water lost during your training. Choose nutrient-dense foods like your milks, your whole grains, but also think about the context as well. So if, for example, you know that you're going out for that long run, you want something that's low in fat and low in fiber, opting for those maybe carbohydrates that's deemed not as healthy are perfectly fine as well. And it's really important, which I haven't actually mentioned, is to practice this during your trainings. There's no point on the morning off a really important race that you're now going to decide that I'm going to implement in or try this magic bowl of Rice Krispies if you're not practicing it during your training. So it's really important to do that, to figure out what actually works for you and recover as well. So really, really important to get enough sleep and focus on your nutrition and your downtime. Some basic strategies to implement as an athlete and a coach. So it's awareness of the hydration. So bringing water to training, which I'm sure you're all doing anyway. Checking urine color, making your own sports drinks for competition, training days. Maybe have athletes meet as a group for a pre-comp meal. This is really to ensure that everyone's eating something. But also you could incorporate into, maybe someone is allocated to make a banana bread or bring some granola bars after the long run on Sunday. I keep using the long run on Sunday as the example, but you get my drift. So if somebody has that job to do for the rest of the group, it's making the nutrition of the process, that you're not just going away yourself to eat whatever. It's become part of your training plan. An athlete should bring snacks and foods with them as well for all their training sessions. So some final words then. So food is not the enemy. It can help you feel and feel better and contribute to a more consistent performance. Weight is not the enemy either. So your scales do not measure your muscle mass. And if you're not well fueled, there will be no muscle mass gains, and that can affect your strength, your endurance, and your speed. When you match your energy requirements, there may be a bump in your weight. expect that. So I suppose that's important for maybe an individual that is under fueling, that they may see a bump in the weight, but that is just, I suppose, your body trying to find its balance again. Listen to your body cues. For females, this may be a lot easier, but males need to be aware of that as well. And like we discussed earlier, that these illnesses and these injuries, that you may just not be unlucky. It may be due to a mismatch in training, nutrition, and any other stressors that you have going on in your life. So it's important maybe to reflect on that if it is happening on a consistent basis. So that's it. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.